We got this little guy right here that we see every day. His life matters. He needs to know that he can do what he wants to do whenever he leaves his house.
As a black man, as a former player, I think it's best for me to support the players and just not be here tonight.
And being a black man in America, it's not easy, so.
We've seen this in all of our heroes constantly taken down. We understand it's not going to end, but that doesn't
Amira Rose Davis is an assistant professor of history and African American studies at Penn State and co-host of the Burn It All Down podcast. Amira, thanks for being with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me back.
Major change in the sports world last night. The WNBA actually took the lead on a lot of this activism. How do you explain what happened yesterday, Amira?
Yeah, like the WNBA has been leading the way for years in terms of kneeling and holding pressers about police brutality, and really we see this has been building. As you mentioned, it's the 4-year anniversary yesterday of Colin Kaepernick's kneeling, but yesterday was essentially a strike across multiple platforms where something hit a tipping point. And we have seen since the murder of George Floyd and the molasses-like way Breonna Taylor's murder has been dealt with, that there has been a rise in athletic activism, a new wave that has been more acute, more poignant, and more decisive in action. And I think that's one of the things that we saw last night.
Many of these players, I mean, if there was an industry that was really trying to survive this coronavirus pandemic right now, sports tried to do everything it could in its power to make sure that their players, from Major League Baseball to the NBA, are playing games. These folks have been quarantined. Some of them have come down with the virus themselves. How do you explain what happened in that context? I mean, it was part of do we think that part of what happened here was the fact that these players are in a bubble, that they're able to, organize rather quickly because of the coronavirus?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, because I think that the effects of the virus have actually amplified the possibility of collective action and solidarity, not just being in proximity together, but the time off from sports that we had in the spring. But a lot of people communicate and talk and think through sporting structures and power dynamics. And I think that has also amplified this current moment where leagues you've seen not only are trying to get people to return to sports and to get the games flowing again, but they also have had to deal with these kind of corporate expressions of Black Lives Matter, whether it's painting courts or putting jersey names on their jersey. And I think one of the things that we saw last night is players are essentially saying these performative actions were good, but they're not enough. And here we are in this moment, in this country, in a pandemic, in the midst of a revolution, and we can't act like business can go on as usual, and we can't be your entertainment to let you escape as viewers, as fans, because this has to stop.
Most notably, I think we're also seeing a couple of things. Broadcasters, including Kenny Smith, very emotional in talking about why he would not want to participate in his broadcast yesterday. White players supporting their black colleagues as well. What do you make of all of that? The fact that this is really going beyond what Colin Kaepernick essentially started 4 years ago.
Yeah, one of the things that I think about a lot is that in the history of the country, Black people have been absolutely fine to be accepted as entertainers, whether it's athletes or singers, etc. And so racism has actually built the platform on which they now stand. And athletes harnessing that can act as both amplifiers and drivers of the conversation. And I think that this moment, we can't discount the activists on the ground, the boots on the ground, without that work, we wouldn't be here either. But one of the things that athletes are able to do with sports is take that platform that's been built, take that one area in which Black bodies have been accepted or had the ability to get a foot in the door, and say, we're going to use this platform, we're going to amplify these concerns, and we're going to drive the conversation because you're watching us. And even if you don't want to hear our voice, we have actual power. We have power in the labor that we do and what we provide, and we're going to harness that to make sure we're having a conversation that includes all of the inequities that we're talking about.
I'm wondering if we know where the leagues stand on this. I mean, some of these players, I imagine, are breaking some sort of agreement or contract as they do this. Do they have the support of their teams and their leagues?
Yeah, I think it's something to keep an eye on. Certainly under their CBAs in both the NBA and the WNBA, there's no strike language around resistance, like you saw. Now, oftentimes it's phrased around collective bargaining, right? And so holding out in terms of changing revenue streams within the leagues, but it also would cover this. So it would be something to watch because I think the leagues are going to have to contend with that they've been giving lip service for the last few months towards Black Lives Matter. And now it's like, all right, it's here. What does that support really look like? And I think that there's a lot of nervous executives. I think there's a lot of Slack messages and meetings happening about how do we do this, how do we convene it. And I think the way our power works in terms of sporting structures is that, you know, athletic labor is such a threat to that, I think the calculation is how can we support this and how can we also rein it in or get it to a place that we can control again. And so I think one of the things to keep an eye on is in what ways is it
for her sharp prosecutorial skills. In her speech today, she'll focus on how President Trump has handled COVID-19 and the economic fallout from the pandemic. She also intends to speak about Joe Biden's plans to contain the virus and how that differs from the Trump administration. Democrats have been consistently pointing out what they see as President Trump's failed leadership on the coronavirus. Meanwhile, the pandemic has not been a featured topic during this GOP convention. Asma Khalid, NPR News.
Authorities in Wisconsin have released the name of the police officer who shot and critically wounded a black man. Chuck Birnbach of member station WUWM reports the shooting of Jacob Blake has sparked several nights of violent demonstrations in the city of Kenosha.
The officer has been identified as Rustin Shusky, who has been with the Kenosha Police Department for 7 years. The Wisconsin Department of Justice is reviewing the shooting. It will then be up to Kenosha County District Attorney Mike Gravely to determine if any charges against the officer are appropriate. Gravely says his office does not have a close personal relationship with Shusky.
He's a patrol officer. He's not a detective who works intimately with us. He's not management where he would be at meetings with us in that way.
Shusky and the other officers involved in Sunday's incident are on administrative leave. Wisconsin Attorney General Josh Call says the officers are fully cooperating with the investigation. For NPR News, I'm Chuck Birnbach in Milwaukee.
Stocks are trading mixed on Wall Street at this hour. The Dow is up 51 points, the S&P down 7. You're listening to NPR News in Washington.
Good afternoon, it's 1:04. I'm Eugene Song with WHYY News. Montgomery County officials say one person incarcerated in his county prison has died of the coronavirus. It's the first COVID-19 related death the prison has reported. County Commissioner Val Arkush didn't name the person, but said that they have been hospitalized for 10 days. The person was incarcerated in mid-2018 and was over 60 years old. Arkush says they had 3 underlying medical conditions that likely contributed to their death and extended her, quote, deepest condolences to the person's family. 24 people in the Montgomery County Correctional Facility have tested positive for COVID-19 since August 2nd, according to Arkush. She says 15 prison staffers have tested positive this month, and all are in stable condition. Pennsylvania Governor Tom Wolf's administration is outlining plans and services in place to help families navigate back to the back-to-school amid the COVID-19 pandemic. For WHYY, Sam Dunklall reports it's confident most families can send their kids back to in-person classes.
Parents across the Commonwealth have a lot of questions this year. Is my child going to get a consistent education this fall? What am I going to do if I need to work? Besides me, who can safely watch my child during the pandemic? State Human Services Secretary Teresa Miller has a few answers. She says after-school programs, food assistance, and a temporary easing of child care regulations can help parents attend to their family's needs.
We're just trying to get creative and come up with as many options as we can so families aren't in a position of having to quit their job to stay at home.
As far as instruction goes, the administration is encouraging in-person classes where possible. To help prevent spread, Health Secretary Dr. Rachel Levine says the state will prioritize testing and contact tracing for those in school communities. I'm Sam Dunklall in Harrisburg.
Forecast for today, a mix of clouds and sun, a stray shower or thunderstorm possible this afternoon, getting very close to our high of 93. Tonight, some clouds, stray shower or thunderstorm possible, and a low of 75 degrees.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Our contributors include Home Advisor, committed to helping homeowners find the right pros for their home projects. Homeowners can check cost guides, book appointments, and pay for more than 100 everyday projects with their Home Advisor mobile app.
From NPR and WBUR, I'm Tanya Mosley.
I'm Jeremy Hobson. It's Here and Now. Laura is moving north after slamming into southwestern Louisiana early this morning as a Category 4 hurricane with 150-mile-per-hour winds. It has since weakened, but not before inflicting heavy damage, including starting a fire at a chemical plant in Louisiana. Nearby residents have been asked to stay indoors. Corey Smith is a meteorologist with News 15 in Lafayette, Louisiana. He is in Lake Charles, hard by the storm. Corey, what is it like where you are?
Yeah, so really when the sun started to rise earlier today, we kind of got the scope of really the damage that we were seeing here in Lake Charles. You hear noises with the buildings overnight. You can't really see anything, but we were able to get out. I'm here with one of my reporters, and we were able to get out on some of the streets, but really most of the streets here in Lake Charles are impassable right now, and that's really due to mostly power lines being down, trees down. But really, I think the most sobering thing is just seeing there's almost no buildings that really don't have any damage. Everything has either moderate damage up to severe damage, it looks like right now here across the city. So it definitely looks like a possibly catastrophic storm for the region.
Mm-hmm. And is it your sense that the worst of the damage from the storm is so far is in Lake Charles, or are there other places that you're hearing about that are even worse?
Yeah, so just the wind damage and things of that nature, I do think that Lake Charles probably took the biggest hit with that just because it's a populated center. Some of the areas that we haven't really heard about as much are those coastal parishes. So the parishes are what some people might know as counties down to the south along the coastal Gulf of Mexico region. They're very rural. There's a lot of swamp, a lot of marsh down there. But there were some huge storm surges last night, and that was really the thing that we were trying to harp to, people around here was, those storm surges were going to be incredibly high and cause a lot of damage. And thankfully, there were mandatory evacuations in order for some of those parishes. But I think once we start getting people out there, we're going to kind of get the true scope of that damage down there. It's possible, that some communities might be wiped off the map from some of the storm surge that moved through.
Have you seen any people in Lake Charles who stayed and rode out the storm there?
Yeah, so we were actually able to talk to some people this morning, and really the thing for them, we actually talked to a lady here at our hotel, and she had a husband who, unfortunately had that mindset of, I've been through Rita, I've been through all these other storms that moved through the area before, and I was fine. And, every storm is a different beast, and a lot of people like to compare these storms. She was still trying to get in contact with them. Power is pretty much out throughout the region here this morning, so that's really, I think the thing right now is just people are trying to get into contact with those that did stay behind because, with the scale of the damage that we're seeing, there is that chance that there was certain conditions overnight.
And have you been able to see any authorities who've been able to make it to parts of Lake Charles that need help at this point?
So we did see some Lake Charles police and fire units out earlier today. It looks like they were just kind of surveying things right now, kind of driving around to possibly, run into people that did need help. But we haven't seen any large-scale operations. We haven't seen anything, I would say, too organized. It just seems like they're just trying to get things together just to kind of assess what's going on this morning.
Now, you mentioned your hotel. Did you stay in Lake Charles overnight and ride out the storm there?
Yeah, so we actually stayed overnight. It's called the Golden Nugget. It's a casino, so a 15-story tower, pretty large, sturdy building. And I think the most amazing thing is we started seeing those very powerful winds with the eye wall moving through. And you could hear these very loud banging noises. The windows were flexing. We actually had to take shelter inside. But when the sun came up this morning, there's actually parts of these buildings, like the concrete just ripped right off of them. And I think that really, attests to the sheer power of the storm that moved through. I mean, it literally tore buildings apart, and even, well-built ones as well. So it seems like really no structure was safe in this event.